What's going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds vs. Boys here, playing a little Monday morning quarterback the day after the Eagles lost to Tampa. Again, another loss in Tampa. They were absolutely shredded, and they are now 2-2 on the season going into their bye week in week 5. It was a pretty miserable experience for the fans who traveled down there, dealing with a hurricane to get there, then sitting in 108-degree heat, only to watch their team and their defense especially get absolutely shredded for 3 hours. This was a non-competitive game for the Eagles. It never felt like that they had a chance. They were down early. They never were able to recover from that. We'll go through all of it, and I think we're at a pretty we've completed the first chapter of the NFL season, right? September's over. We have a good idea now of who the contenders are. I think we have a good kind of, litmus test sample size to judge these teams and the Eagles especially. So let's get into all of that. Let's get into the game and how that projects for the future. Kind of like what we did last week. We're live on YouTube this way. We're live on TikTok this way. We'll be taking comments as they come in, talking about this Eagles game and where they go from here. Last week, we were able to do a show where we said, hey, here were all these positive things that they could take moving forward into the season that you really liked and what you saw from them. This will be a total opposite, honestly. Everything that we saw from them yesterday, if that's like that going forward, you're in a real danger zone situation. Now, I'm going to start positive. I'm going to start with what's good for this team because it kind of leads into all the bad. So let's start there. They're 2-2 going into the bye. They played yesterday without their 3 best players. A lot of this is really just getting Devontae Smith, A.J. Brown, and Lane Johnson back, and they will look like a much better product. And you saw that product in week 1. The offense flashes a lot more when those guys are there. So just getting those guys healthy. An early bye week I don't love. This year I absolutely love it. The ability to just get those 3 guys back solves so many of the issues for this team. And if you look at the schedule in October, they have the 1-3 Cleveland Browns, the 1-3 New York Giants, the 1-3 Cincinnati Bengals, and the 0-4 Jacksonville Jaguars. Whatever the gauntlet was last year with the tough teams, this is the total opposite in October after the bye week. So you go by 4 teams with losing records. Now, they've traveled 3 times, even though they've had home games. They went to Brazil, they went to New Orleans, and they went to Tampa short-handed. They very much played like a team that's been traveling a ton and that played short-handed, right? So this is still a very talented team. It's still an offense that can flash. It still has an offense that has 3 skill position players who are phenomenal. Then A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, and Saquon Barkley. Dallas Goedert has also thrived without those guys there and has stepped up. They have the skill position players. They have the offensive line. All of this is obvious, right? So really, to me, is they limped into the bye week. They did not look good yesterday. They played in 108-degree heat, short-handed, and they look like it. Now, that all kind of leads into my bad, though, because there are reasonable excuses, including the heat, including the injuries that you can take. But there are problems with this team that kind of almost balance out the fact that they're so talented. This team, again yesterday, lost the penalty yardage battle. They've lost every week this year. They lost the turnover battle. They've lost every week this year. We've made it through September. They haven't been they've lost the turnover battle and the penalty yardage battle every single week. They had 12 missed tackles according to the broadcast. Ray Didinger counted 18. Regardless whose number is correct, that's double-digit missed tackles from the defense. They had 1 penalty where a guy on a punt returner, an Isaiah Rodgers, pushed a Tampa Bay Buccaneers player, on their gunner, into Cooper DeJean as he's catching a fair catch on the punt and fumbling the football. So it's a penalty turnover to get your defense off the field. They did not score a point in the first quarter. They have not scored a point in the first quarter the entire season. We just talked about at the beginning of the show, this is a good sample size for them a month in. Well, through that entire sample size, they haven't scored a single point in the first quarter. These are repeat problems that it doesn't really seem to matter who's on the field. And what does that speak to? Lack of discipline, lack of attention, lack of prep work. This isn't an Eagles thing. It's just a football thing. The first 15 so plays, your first 2 drives are usually scripted plays. Going through the week, what plays you're going to run. Well, the Eagles come out and they're not scoring. They didn't have a first down until halfway through the second quarter. So if you're running these scripted plays and nothing's working, what does that tell me? It tells me that the prep work isn't there, the execution isn't there, and the penalty and turnover thing, that is lack of attention to detail. I have never seen a team this much talent and this lack low of attention to detail. It'll drive you insane watching them. And then to add to this conversation of lack of attention to detail, bad optics in terms of the on-field product, after the game, you've got Darius Slay tweeting about his stats, calling himself an all-pro, tweeting out how many, passes defense he's had and all his career stats. You have Devin White, who didn't join the team on the trip for personal reasons, retweeting a Levante David strip sack and fumble recovery from his former team, who he is now a member of the Eagles, but retweeting positive plays for the other team that you just played. You have Isaiah Rodgers, who shoved the gunner into Cooper DeJean on the punt, going to Twitter and saying we are all human. And I want to get into that because there is an aspect of that, but it again speaks to the lack of accountability. To me, like, there's just zero accountability. There's zero attention to detail. They do not do anything well in terms of fundamentals. And as talented as they are, and they're going to look pretty talented this next month, I feel like, I think they will get rolling. But this is just a repeat problem. Even when they were good last year, when they were 10-1, we were saying, it just seems like something's off. It seems like they're winning despite their own mistakes. Well, now it's caught up to them where there's certain position groups that aren't playing well, or they have injuries at certain positions, so they're shorthanded. And now when you have those issues and the talent isn't there, you're seeing that spike of penalties, of turnovers, of just flat out bad execution and tackling and gap discipline and stuff like that, where those all rear their ugly head. They're not a disciplined team. It doesn't feel like they're a well-coached team. They honestly, the Eagles feel like the kid in class who, if you called on them for popcorn reading, everyone in the class sighed simultaneously because you're like, I know this kid can't read. This is going to be brutal to watch. That's what it's like watching the Eagles on defense. Penalties, holdings, they can't get a pass rush. It just looks like they don't know where to be. They can't get themselves off the field on third down. It's just a giant groan every time they're out there. It is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. We'll pause here. We'll take some comments here. Bro, we are cooked again this year. We love to see the Eagles downfall. I don't know who you're a fan of. We've got to go Birds, so at least we're staying positive. I don't think they're fully cooked. Like I said at the beginning of the show, the thing about it is they're still so insanely talented. That's what makes this even more frustrating, is that if they just had a semblance of discipline and it looked like they had any level of execution in practice during the week, that they would come out and, be prepared. This is a team that you'd be like, well, they're 3-1 at the very least. They're 4-0. Like, you would be very confident in this team. The problem is Minnesota should be number one in the power rankings this week. They might have to. In fairness, the Chiefs are always going to be our number one in the power rankings. But it's kind of like LeBron in the MVP rankings. We always just put like the Chiefs is number one and the real rankings start at number two. So Minnesota should be up there. They are phenomenal. But that is actually, Minnesota is like a perfect example of a team where you say, well, on paper, they don't look the part, but if you watch them play, everything they do is clean. The Eagles are kind of like the opposite of that. It's like, well, we have just listen, they've got Justin Jefferson. He's the best receiver in the league. He's proving again. Anyone who took somebody else in fantasy, like, I never understood that to begin with. They do have talent there, but they're a team that just has everything in a clean form. The Eagles are kind of like the opposite of that. They have endless bounds of talent on offense, but nothing ever looks clean. Everything looks rigid in what they do. Eagles and Cowboys fans, beware, the Daniels kid is a problem. I totally think that Jaden Daniels, Kevin and I, my co-host, we've talked about this a ton. He will be a problem. I don't know if the Commanders as a whole are a problem. They are 3-1. They played incredibly well yesterday in Arizona. But I'd love to see the Eagles and the Commanders on the field this week. Our defense is terrible. Starts at the defensive line, not worry about our offense. I totally agree. I think the same problems kind of exist within this team. And like I said, injuries will solve a lot of this. Devontae Smith being on the field solves a lot of this. A.J. Brown being on the field solves a lot of this. Lane Johnson being back solves a lot of this, right? But on defense, I'm not seeing anything from them that I'm like, oh, they're just one quick fix away. We'll get into the one possible quick fix at edge rusher that is very unique for everybody involved. But right now, I think it's a bad defensive line group. They don't get any pass rush. They don't set edges. They did against the Saints, but for the most part, they have been very bad at setting edges. And yesterday, the plan was head scratching from Vic Fangio. It's a team that Baker Mayfield's going to try to get the ball out quickly, and it's a team that hasn't been able to run the ball effectively. It was almost brilliant in the simplicity of their plan yesterday, which was screens to side, get the ball out of his hands quick. They flashed the next gen stats during the game. It was like 2.4 seconds to get the ball out of his hands, and they excelled at that. But they aren't reinventing football and what they're doing with that, right? Like, they didn't do anything too crazy or too unique that anybody who was watching or anybody on defense wouldn't have been able to pick up. So I don't understand why Vic Fangio didn't see that coming, where they were going to almost utilize the short passing game as their running game, because they've struggled so much running the ball this year with Rachaad White. And they really didn't even get it going yesterday, but they continued to just use that short passing game as a substitute for the running game because it was working. They were without their right tackle as well. So they were like, hey, let's get the ball out quickly, from side to side, make these guys move on the Eagles defense, which proved to be effective. And the Eagles just never adjusted. Need to blitz and play press coverage more. I totally agree. And like yesterday is a perfect example of lack of discipline, lack of prep work. Like, you're not adjusting to what they're doing. You're playing off ball, and you're just allowing these underneath routes, all these like side to side screens to the running backs and wide receivers to get blocking ahead. Like, it just didn't make any sense for you not to see that coming from a Bucs team who really hasn't been able to run the ball and is trying to get rhythm in their offense. I just don't understand. Everyone should have seen this coming, except the Eagles didn't. And Vic Fangio, I know he's very well respected in the league. At some point, you have to make that adjustment. They kind of did, but not really. Like, through that first two drives, it was just right down the field. We got to learn how to tackle too. Again, like, these are like execution during practice things that they're just not doing well. Tyler Barrett says Baker for MVP this year. Maybe. I think it's, Mahomes is always going to be up there. Eagles went to Tampa for their bye week and didn't show up to play. It felt that way, right? Mac L says that the Eagles kind of just went, and that felt like a bye for them. Like, they did not show up and did not execute. They were not mentally focused at all. And I get it. I look at my skin complexion for everyone watching on YouTube and TikTok. Does it look like I could withstand 108-degree heat in the sun? No, I'm a red guy. I'm genetically just not built for that type of heat. I understand going there and playing a 1:00 game is a brutal disaster for anybody who's involved. So again, I think there are reasonable excuses to what happened yesterday, but there's just some that aren't, because it's repeat problems. We saw it against Green Bay. We saw it against New Orleans. We saw it against Atlanta. We're seeing it against Tampa Bay. Like, it's just happening again and again. So we'll shift over from the defense, who I thought was just absolutely terrible yesterday. Like, there was no adjustment to the quick game from the Bucs on offense, trying to get the ball out of Baker's hands quickly, and they just never really adjusted to it. No Edwards, hot take, Jordan Davis is not good. Sorry. I think that is a common take. I don't know if I fully agree, because I think he's good at what his role is. Now, if you tell me someone like Kyle Hamilton is more valuable because he does more things on a NFL field, I totally understand where you're coming from with that, right? Like, he would just provide more value to the team. Mitchell should be covering the number one wide receiver. I want to get into that as well. I've had it with Darius Slay. I want to touch on the offense, and then I want to get into the overall issue I think that's bothering a lot of fans and creating a likability issue with this team. Quinyon, again, I thought played pretty well. They need to fix things within the defense. Again, sometimes you just got to let your nuts hang and let these, if he gets trial by fire, that's fine. But let Quinyon Mitchell play press coverage. Let Cooper DeJean play in the slot corner. Like, if this is what you're getting from Avonte Maddox, I loved him, but put DeJean out there and let them learn. Sidney Brown will probably be back, I'm assuming, soon. Put him out there. Let these guys press. I want to know how good they are, right? Like, I think we want to know what these guys have and let them learn. And sometimes if they get beat deep by Mike Evans, fine. That's fine. But sitting through that paper cut offense of 6 yards on first down, 7 yards on second down, I can't sit and allow that. Like, Baker was 12 of 14. They're up 14-0 before you can even blink. You can't allow that to happen. Sometimes you just got to take the gambles and see what you have in these guys. Let them press up, bring some pressure. I know these defensive ends, I know they're not good. It's not changing. There's no bye week fix for this. There's nothing that can change. There's one thing that we'll talk about that might change, but at the end of the day, like, it's just not a good defensive line point. Like, let's have some pressure. Let's play up on them. Let's get a little bit more aggressive. Like, if we get burnt, we get burnt. But at this time, like, right now, like Mike Evans beating them over top would be what? An explosion? But we're still watching the house catch on fire, right? Like it feels like we're still getting third-degree burns because of the defense that we're playing. We're playing off ball so much that it's just a pitch and catch down the field again and again and again for this teams. And I just don't get it. At this point, we have nothing to lose. Agree. I totally agree. Opinions on Sirianni getting fired, or I want to get into that. I'm higher on Sirianni than most people, but there's just indefensible stuff with this team right now. That's someone's head's got to like someone heads have to roll if you play like this, right? And as the coach, it's usually got to be you. Also, why did we sign Devin White? Yeah, last point on the defense before we get to the offense. Nobody had a good day, but Nakobe Dean and Zach Bond have been the best linebackers on this team. They had played really well up until yesterday. I don't get the Devin White thing, and now he's retweeting like other teams. Like at this point, you got to cut your losses. You got to cut your losses. Our Eagles make us drink. Hey, listen, there's a bar behind me there. I would love to crack one open talking about this offense here in a second because it's been so bad. To the offense. Again, like I've mentioned, having Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on the field, hot take, just makes everything go away, right? Like it was like you can just see it. The scheme, everyone's mad that Saquon got 2 carries and they didn't like the answer by Sirianni. He's like, well, we had 9 plays, and if you go 3 and out, no one's going to touch the ball. Yeah, like I get it. Everyone's mad about that, but there is some truth to that. If you go back and look at those plays early, they just loaded the box and dared them to throw the ball down the field. Like it was just like, yeah, oh yeah, we know who's not out here. Go ahead, run the ball with Saquon Barkley. And you saw it on that 2nd and 10 early in the game. Like I think it looked like a Big Ten defense, man. Like they had 8, 9 people up there. Like there was zero threat of them getting beat over the top. They didn't even care. What's crazy is the literal first play, like they did get beat deep. And if Jalen finds Saquon Barkley, it's probably it's at least a 40-yard catch, if not a 70-yard touchdown catch and run, if he keeps that ball in play and doesn't throw it out of bounds. And that's just like a brutal can't miss throw from Jalen right there. But the reason that happened is they were playing so far up. They're like, yeah, beat us over the top. Try to do it. We're like, because we don't believe that you can do it. We're going to stack up against the run. So I know people are upset with that. That was the least of my problems with the offense. And I do think that they will be good coming out of the bye week. But again, lack of discipline. Jalen Hurts is making Carson Wentz level turnover mistakes. It's 30-16. You're moving the ball. You're in the red zone. How you don't feel that pressure behind you? You already ducked by the guy. He did. It's not like he slipped on a banana peel of Mario Kart. Now the 6 racers have passed him. He's still there. He's still there. How do you not feel that in year 4 as an NFL quarterback, that the internal clock is sometimes just not there with him? And especially this year, that's creating these strip sacks that it's just really, really bothering me with stuff like that, because we talked about this last week on our show. This is the stuff that we ran the last guy out of town for. And now Jalen Hurts is doing it on a consistent basis, and they're losing the turnover battle every week. And it just can't happen. And it's amplified when you don't have the amount of talent out there that you should without Devontae Smith or without AJ Brown. Again, a lot of that is fixed when they come back. But to me, what's bothering me the most is even when they're out there, like what did you see last week when you threw it to Devontae Smith over the middle of the field when he was still in the game and Tyrann Mathieu was right up on him? Like, what did you see? Why was that Devontae's route? There are too many questions with the offensive scheme, the offensive game plan, the fact that they come out every first quarter and the scripted plays aren't working. They have this tendency to pass on first down, run on second. It is the off trend of what you're used to, where it's run on first, pass on second to set up a third and manageable play. Their theory and belief is you can throw on first down and it makes it easier. But that's failing, and then you're running on second, and it's predictable, and then you're in 2nd and 10, which creates 3rd and longs, and it creates just Jalen Trent bouncing and bailing out of the pocket. The philosophy at its core is not working. I don't get it. Like, I just don't get their plan. I don't understand that philosophy, and it's predictable at this point. Everything they do looks predictable, even when those guys are on the field. It bothers me because we brought in a new offensive coordinator, and I think Kellen Moore has done a really good job over the course of the first 4 games, right? Yesterday was bad for everybody, but he's been good so far. But there's a level of predictability within this offense that I don't understand for the amount of talent that they have. Like, it just shouldn't be happening. And you saw that yesterday, literally in the first 3 and out. It looked like the Bucks knew exactly what was coming. They knew they were passing on 1st and 10. They knew they were running on 2nd and 10. It's so bad. Like, it's just such a predictable, scripted play offense. And listen, maybe that's because we're all watching every week and we're seeing this team more. Like, the tendencies of the team because we watch them for 17 weeks. We follow everything. But it just feels like everyone's able to read what they're doing. It feels like they've keyed on to what Jalen Hurts is doing, and it's creating turnover plays. It's creating 3rd and longs. I'm just kind of bothered by the overall philosophy and the stuff that they do. Let's get into some comments on the offense. We should have a run heavy tight end with Barkley. I agree. I don't think the tight ends have been great at blocking, but I totally agree. First game that they at least had some different play designs. I like what Kellen Moore's doing on offense. It's just they get in their own way so much. Jalen is having a hard time with the blitz again. He had a hard time with pressure. Something needs to be studied with Todd Bowles in Tampa Bay, because they go down there and they turn Jalen Hurts back into the guy who got benched at Alabama. Like, it's crazy what happens when he goes there. Again, this is an offense that put up 400 yards last week with two backup offensive linemen and 2 backup wide receivers, right? Like, it's not like we're watching the most anemic Iowa level football with this offense. They've been pretty good. This is a continuation of last year. The supernatural funk is still here. It does feel that way, and I just think it's such a lack of accountability from these guys and lack of attention to detail. Bowles has his number for sure. It is insane what happens when they go to Tampa Bay. We need Kelsey. I think it's like I think honestly, the offensive line's been pretty good. Guys were in and out yesterday. Again, 108-degree heat. I don't know why we're doing this in the NFL. It's like the Seahawks with Wentz. Yeah, it's like the Seahawks with everybody in the Eagles. But I don't even remember the last time we beat the Seahawks. It's crazy. They just need to run the ball more and do quick passes to help Jalen. Again, like, perfect example, right? Like, the Bucks lost to the Broncos at home, and it's not a great Broncos team, right? And they couldn't run the ball when they were trying to. So they were like, how can we amend this? Oh, let's kind of quick pass our way out of this. That's like them reading, reacting from one week to another. You don't often see with the Eagles. That's kind of what is bothering me. It's like, okay, we should probably get the ball out of our quarterback's hands quickly. We have a backup right tackle and 2 of our receivers out. And you don't see that. I don't think that's a Jalen Hurts thing. I think that's a coaching staff thing, but there is a total disconnect between all of them. It leads to turnover plays. It leads to 3rd down issues. Let's take some comments from YouTube here. I think we can all take a deep breath on the offense. The defense is a major concern. Totally agree. I'm not overly worried with the offense. It is the total team thing with them that bothers me. It doesn't matter who's out there. The wide receivers are getting called for holds. They have illegal man downfield penalties. The quarterback in year 4 is still holding the ball for too long, and that leads to turnovers. It's leading to red zone turnovers that are just absolutely backbreaking. Even though it felt like they got dominated yesterday, they're down 30-16. He fumbles the ball at the 20-yard line in the red zone, and it just felt like the game was over right there instead of turning it into a 30-23 and giving this team some life. It was just brutal to watch, and it continues to happen. It is an overall team thing that I don't know what's going on through the week and through training camp that they look this ill prepared for stuff like this. Bye week is huge. There's a lot of 2-2 teams out there. Thank you, Brian. Yeah. So again, they're 2-2. I'm not hitting a panic button. I'm just frustrated with some of the things that they do, and they do have a anti-gauntlet schedule coming up with 4 teams with losing records in October. So you have bye week to get healthy, and then 4 teams that have been struggling. Like, we're complaining about the Eagles. Go look at those teams in the way that they've been struggling and what they've been struggling with. We'll complain about Jalen Hurts today, but I think any of us would be taking Jalen Hurts today over Deshaun Watson with the 1-3 Browns. Over to TikTok. Is AJ Brown and Smith coming back soon? They should be back after the bye. I think Lane Johnson that was weird. I don't know if you guys heard that story. He got cleared, and then other doctors came in and said that he should wait and not play. I've never heard of this before. If anyone else has heard of this, I don't know who is the ultimate overseer of concussions, but it's a little odd to me that we're this kind of pressed on concussions and making sure we're taking care of them, that one set of doctors say it's okay and another set says it's not okay. So he cleared protocol, but the doctor said he still shouldn't play. Like, well, then what's the point of the concussion protocol? Like, I don't really get that. But Devontae should be back and AJ Brown should be back as well. Hurts is a system QB without his Avengers. He's below average. Proof is on the field. Maybe. The problem with him is, well, one, yeah, you take two receivers off. Like, you take Chris Godwin and Mike Evans off the field. What's Baker Mayfield, right? Like, take your two receivers and your starting right tackle out, and everybody kind of looks like that. That's the problem. Reed Blankenship was sick, right? Yeah, I think so. Again, I don't know if it's a stomach bug going through the team or the fact that it was just 108 degrees. Like, the human body just isn't built to play football in that level of humidity and heat. And I thought it was really just weird to have a 1 p.m. game there in Tampa. Can't work with a rookie and two receivers who can't get open. Yeah, they're bad. Vita Vea was a problem. He's amazing. Only Mahomes can make it without wide receiver 1 and 2. There's a reason he's the best in the league. We talk about it all the time. Like, the MVP award is fake. It should go to Mahomes every single year. Stroud, Purdy, Stafford, Mahomes, Daniels don't look like that without playmakers. They kind of do, though. Mahomes is a different level. But, like, the Texans, I was so high on. You go look at their stats. The Texans have not been great this year. And I think we were expecting a lot more out of CJ Stroud, but they were like 29th in total offense before this week with the win 24-20. Tampa wore white because of this heat. That's another thing. Like, how does the NFL, a billion-dollar corporation, we don't figure this out, that it's coming down to like either play that game at 4:30. Like, the home team wears white to avoid because it's 110 degrees on the field. And then the stands, it looked like you're not getting a sellout crowd or anything close because people can't withstand the heat. I heard like they have like security that's monitoring the shade seats in the shade area. Like, what are we doing as a league that it's coming to this, that you're not showing a good on-field product and you're not visually showing a good product with fans there because of how hot it is? What does that, come on. Like move the game to 4:30. Like, the heat we should never have to worry about 108-degree heat during a game. Is that the reason they've lost? No. Daniel Jones getting bailed by Malik Neighbors. He is so good. Broncos County 2-2. Listen, the night and day for the Buccaneers this week, losing to the Broncos and then just absolutely shredding the Eagles. So back to the Eagles for a little bit. The overall accountability of this team is driving me insane. After the game, I think this is a perfect microcosm of the Eagles and what is wrong. They're down 14-0. The defense finally does their job. They get a stop on 3rd and 7. Exactly what we wanted from them. And I believe that as the series where Brandon Graham got a sack. All right, pressure from our defensive ends. This is what we're looking for. They force a punt. Cooper DeJean back to return it. Isaiah Rodgers pushes a guy from the Buccaneers into DeJean as he's fielding the punt, and he fumbles, and your defense is right back out there after finally getting a stop, and the Bucs have the ball in the red zone. It was a chance to finally catch your breath, stop treading water of your defense, see if we can get something going on offense. Instead, the momentum got totally shifted, and the Bucs had the ball right back. They would score on that drive to go up 21-0. After the game, Isaiah Rodgers says, I pushed him into the punt returner because I thought it was a quote unquote veteran savvy move. I knew that would draw a penalty. The problem with that is not true. Where the fuck did you get that? That has never been the case in any level of football, that you could shove someone into your own punt returner and draw a flag for it. If they run into the punt returner, maybe, but you can't just outwardly shove someone into your own punt returner. That is insane to not know that rule and be on special teams. And what's even bothers me even more with it is, I remember going to like Andy Reid training camps at Lehigh back in the day when they did like classic training camp 2-a-days. And the second practice of the day in the heat was mostly like special teams. They would run punts, kickoffs, just like sure up the special team stuff. That was a lot of that second practice of the day. Are the Eagles not doing that? Because yesterday, that happened twice. Your own guy later in the game ran into DeJean as he was fielding a punt. And luckily, like, Trotter thought, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. He thought there was a fumble, so he jumped on it, but you're supposed to get out of the way. Like, what are you doing in practice that you're not doing the small things where you got guys shoving people into your punt returner, not knowing the rules, and then another guy running into your punt returner? Like, the special teams to me is like the ultimate fundamentals little thing of the game. What are you doing? What the? You don't know the rules and you're on special teams? You think it's a veteran savvy move? That's shit that they teach you in high school. What are you talking about? Like, that is insane to me. And it is a microcosm of everything wrong with the Eagles. Like, not knowing the rules, running into your own punt returner, creating turnover problems, creating penalties, and then it's an accountability thing. Afterwards, he tweeted out, we are all human, which to that point, I do think is true. Like, with the increased emphasis on gambling and fantasy, these guys, we're always at these players' heads because they didn't go over 60.5 yards and you lose your $5 parlay. Like, he is true when he says we're all human. Like, we're at their heads too much for stuff like that. But he also tweets out, like, have you ever been at your job and dialed the wrong number or gave the customer the wrong amount of cash back? Like, yeah. And to be honest, like, I think that happens in any type of job, right? Like, we do make mistakes in day-to-day life, even us who work like 9 to 5s or host podcasts. Listen, I've hosted this before and forgot to plug the fucking microphone in, right? Like, little things, right? But here's a good example. Say you have a sales job and you're supposed to submit a sales report at the end of the week. And instead of submitting the sales report, you delete that sales report. It's important. It shows that you're executing. It shows that you're doing your job. If I came out afterwards, like, if I did that, my boss would say to me, hey, you can't do that. You can't delete your sales report. They'd probably send out an email to the sales team saying, hey, don't delete your sales report. That is a mistake. You're not supposed to be doing that. You're supposed to be submitting it instead of deleting it. So when you come out and you say that and you don't expect there to be blowback to you making just a bonehead mistake that cost your special teams, that cost your offense, that put your defense back on the field, it's such a stunning lack of accountability that seems to be plaguing this team like a total pandemic. Like, every game that they lose, you find something on social media, mostly from Darius Slay, that makes you want to rip your hair out and makes the loss 10 times worse. It is optically the dumbest team that I have ever seen. Like, Darius Slay, we don't care about your career stats. You got shredded. You lost. At the end of the day, this is about winning and losing games. If you're coming out after the game saying, well, haven't you made a mistake in your job? Yeah, but I get blowback for that. My managers talk to me if I make a mistake. It hurts the company if I do make a mistake. And I know it's a 9 to 5. I know the point you're trying to make, but it is still a mistake that you need to take accountability for, and they just don't. And Darius Slay, that was Isaiah Rodgers, but Darius Slay coming out and saying, oh, well, we'll get him back next week. We don't care. We don't care. Like, I've had enough of it. Stop with the social media. Like, it just goes to show the rampant lack of accountability, the optical, like, not understanding the small details of the game, the lack of execution. It makes them such an unlikable group. And Jalen Hurts, after the game, when asked about him and Nick Sirianni and saying, we have our moments. What are you talking about? You're a head coach in an NFL quarterback. I don't care if you despise each other. It is your job. Everyone has coworkers that they don't like. Everyone has had a boss that they don't like or don't get along with or don't agree with what their policies are. It doesn't matter. You're professionals. The lack of professionalism that runs through this team is insane to me. There are things that you can fix. There is talent on this team. They are better than 20 teams in this league, at least. But that type of shit just drives you up a wall because it shows you guys got killed in that game and you don't got it. You're not getting it. That is the biggest problem to me. When you lose the penalty battle every week, when you lose the turnover battle every week, when you don't make enough big plays, if your nickname is Big Play Slay and Baker Mayfield is going up and down the field from you, don't tweet out your career stats after the game. We don't care. We don't. Win the game. I hate that. I hate that because it just shows such a lack of professionalism and accountability from a team who should get it by now. And I know it's tough playing in the city. It's too tough sometimes. We are too tough on these guys sometimes. And there can be negativity when there shouldn't be. I get it. But this is one of those scenarios. If you miss 12 tackles in that secondary, nobody in the secondary should be tweeting out stuff, deflecting blame, or putting up your career stats, or saying we're all human or whatever like that. No. Listen, take the bye week, get healthy, mentally get prepared for a stretch that you should win some games, but we don't need to hear that shit, and we just don't care. We just don't. It just drives me up a wall. We'll go through some of the comments here on TikTok after that rant. Willing to give them the bye week to get it figured out, and Cleveland must win. Totally agree. Coaching is terrible. That's where it starts. The accountability thing is definitely a coaching thing. I never thought of it this way. I was at the game in Tampa yesterday, and it was so hard to watch. I feel bad that you were there. It seemed so hot. It honestly seemed miserable. How many targets did Dotson get? 1 3/4? Yeah, he just hasn't seemed like he's gotten accustomed to the offense here. And again, he was supposed to be a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 for the Commanders. Didn't work out. You think he'd be a good wide receiver 3 here. Without Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, he's kind of been thrust back into this role, and we knew from Washington, like, he just can't be that wide receiver 1. In another universe, we have Prime Wentz, Jay Jettis, and Christian McCaffrey. True. Sirianni is a puppet. Blame for loss. No credit for wins. I think that's somewhat fair. I think he takes all the blame, and he doesn't sign the players, trade for them, draft them. And I think we're forgiving the front office for a lot of shit that they've been doing. They won't get him back next week, though, because they have a bye week. Do you know what point I'm trying to make? Honestly, make them play during the bye week. Let's see here. We got comments on YouTube. Slay is a comfortable position financially. When he makes a mistake, he's good. When we do it, it can be costly. To me, it's just the problem is the lack of accountability with him, and he just never seems to get it. He just doesn't gel with what kind of we're looking for with the Eagles. I think if you look at the Phillies, I think that is a prime example of guys who get it in this city and usually deliver. And anytime they struggled the past 3 years, they usually make up for it. And you can say the right things to an extent. Sometimes you just have to do the right things. They're a good example of that. I think Slay has been the total opposite. Are y'all blaming the front office? I do blame them a little bit just because of how bad the defensive line is. I think they've put together a pretty good team, but I think there's things that they just struck out on. The number one thing being Bryce Huff. Like this is a total disaster with Bryce Huff at this point. Like this is a 5-alarm fire with him. Like another thing with the social media, like he deletes all the Eagles stuff off social media. Fucking grow up, man. Like I can't take it when we're seeing these tweets and we're deleting stuff and we're retweeting the other team. Grow up, guys. We're 20 and 30 years old. Jesus Christ. You can have CJ Gardner-Johnson. We don't want him. I like CJ. He is what he is. I think we all know what he is at this point. There's a reason he keeps not getting long-term extensions, right? Like we kind of all know who he is. Jalen Hurts hasn't been the same player since he got that massive contract. To me, the problem is his mobility is weird now, right? Like he can't really run side to side, which that problem, I don't know where that came from. Like, I know he had a knee thing last year, but nothing ever came out that he had major surgery or anything like that. I watched a clip of him against the Chargers from the season where we went 9-8, lost in Tampa in the playoffs. The way he ran then is not the way that he runs now. And I don't think it's a contract thing. He looks slower. Like, I don't think that's because he got a new contract and he's like, oh, I'm not going to take a hit because I have my money. To me, it's like that speed that was there is not there. He is not the same dual threat. And I just truly do not get that. Now, what can we do to fix this? There's 2 things. There's 3 things, really. Everyone stop going on Twitter. If you play for the Eagles, would probably be my number 1. 2, just get healthy in the bye week. Again, great offense. This is a really good offense who plays well when they have everybody healthy, and they should have everybody healthy back for the Cleveland game at home. They don't get on a plane again until November. You have a good stretch of schedule. You got some home games. You got a bye week. Rest up. Get healthy. That's an easy number 2. Number 3, I just touched on it a minute ago. Bryce Huff through 4 games has given you nothing. And I'm not saying that to be exaggerative. He truly has given you nothing. He has 0 sacks. He has 1 pressure. He had 1 tackle yesterday. He is quite literally giving you nothing. So I know I just saw a comment, Bill Belichick. I'm kidding. We might not be kidding here in about 2 months. But back to Bryce Huff. This is a total disaster. Like, you're getting nothing from him. He looks non-existent on the field. He looks small on the field. They dropped him back in coverage yesterday. Having him and Nolan Smith in coverage, Nolan Smith is now covering Chris Godwin. What are we doing, guys, there? So the defensive end position, led by Bryce Huff, has just been non-existent. They're quite literally giving you nothing. Brandon Graham was the only defensive end. He is 36-year-old with a sack yesterday. So it's been really, really bad. The obvious answer, and it is unprecedented, is to bring back Hassan Reddick. And I think it could happen, even though, like I said, it's a very unique situation. It's very unprecedented to trade for a player, trade away a player, and then trade them right back. But everybody would kind of be left with egg on their face, right? So it's kind of like almost like you have a receipt for 30 days and you take it back to Target and you're like, listen, this is not the product that I wanted. I'm just going to get my refund. We're just going to go as if it never happened. I know it's unprecedented for that to happen in the NFL, but I truly think it could happen because it hasn't really worked out for anybody involved. You look at the Jets, they really haven't gotten that player. Like Hassan Reddick just hasn't showed up for them. I don't really understand it from their perspective because they knew he wanted an extension and they didn't. They did not give it to him. For Hassan Reddick, he hasn't gotten his extension. Like he wanted that trade so he could get a long-term contract extension. Well, we are now, let's see, October, and he has not gotten it. I don't believe he's gotten it, and he hasn't played this year. So it's tough for him. And then for the Eagles, they traded him away. Now the pass rush sucks, and Bryce Huff has been a disaster. So for everybody involved, it has not been a good situation. Everybody walks away with egg on their face. But honestly, that kind of allows you to make this trade. Like I think everybody involved, and there was some reports this past week that a little birdie said that Hassan Reddick wouldn't mind returning home. And I think now that it's pretty clear that the Jets aren't going to give him a long-term extension, his best bet is to return to Philadelphia where he had success. It would be the best bet for the Jets because they're not giving that extension and they're really not getting the player. So they sacrifice draft picks for him. And for the Eagles, they haven't been able to fill the void that he left. Josh Sweat has underperformed. Bryce Huff has given you quite literally nothing. And Brandon Graham is retiring at the end of this year. So you need somebody. And this is the perfect time with the bye week. I said this last week, like you could have traded for him, but to expect him to be ready in 5 days to go down to the Superdome and be in prime shape and be ready to attack the quarterback just didn't feel reasonable. Getting him in during the bye week, I think would actually be quite reasonable. So at this time, like I really just don't see a downside for any of these teams. It's been a mess since that trade's happened for everybody involved, Hassan, the Jets, and the Eagles. So I think this is the perfect time to do it and see if you can just do anything to help that pass rush because it's the one position group where I can't point to any strengths. Like I think we've been pretty happy with a lot of the different groups at different times during the season, but the defensive end group has just been an absolute zero. Maybe Jalix Hunt gives you something. Again, just throw a young guy out there and see if he works. But I think the most reasonable, it doesn't sound reasonable, but the most reasonable approach at this point would probably just to bring Hassan Reddick back and see if you can make that trade. He probably wants to come home. The Jets are probably tired of dealing with it. No one's giving him that long-term extension. At least get yourself on the field here in Philadelphia and see if you can earn it through the on-field product. And Lord knows you'll have your opportunities because you're the best one of that group, better than Josh Sweat, better than Jalix Hunt at this point, and better than what Bryce Huff has been for you, which has been nothing. Let's go through some comments here. Nick Sirianni is the real issue here. He's been really bad. Can the Eagles still make the playoffs this season? Absolutely. I still think they're the best team in the division. Nick Sirianni is the reason we won't win this year. They win despite him, I think, sometimes. Who do you think will win the Lions? Seahawks? I'm big on the Lions this year, but I actually think it's the Seahawks. Where'd you get that shirt? This is from Rally House. I will admit this is from 2022. If you look at the back of it, it has a schedule from the 2022 season. So I think they have similar shirts, but you might not want this one. What do you trade to acquire Reddick? I think it'd be a similar package to what they gave up. Like I truly think it's like the NFL equivalent of like just having like a receipt refund, which is something. We need to start giving DeJean reps over Avonte Maddox. Totally agree. That's a great comment from Drew Schuyler. I am on full agreement. Put them out there. Quinyon Mitchell, Reed Blankenship, Sidney Brownlee's back, and Cooper DeJean. Like I need to know. I can't deal with any more just tweets from the starting cornerback talking about how his stats after a brutal loss when you lose by 3 touchdowns. Barkley needs more carries. He was our focal point yesterday. Yeah. Played Evan White. At this point, I think they're going to be, I think he will be cut this week. It doesn't hurt to test it. I missed the first comment on that one. Kevin Messina has chimed in. Birds stink. He is a big time Cowboys fan, and they had a huge win over a great Giants team. The offense looked exceptional. Run game for the Cowboys has been so good. Uh, and you know what? There was nobody out there on the market this year that you could have signed at running back who would have made a substantial difference to your offense to help your team out. I can't think of a single player who rushed for 200 yards yesterday that would have looked great in this Cowboys offense that they didn't even try to sign and signed with somebody else. So big time week for the Cowboys there. Nick and Jalen are a big problem right now. Hurts needs coaches that will make him feel confident. Man, I like my quarterbacks to just be confident in themselves. The relationship, I agree, like needs to be better, right? Like, but I don't think that Jalen listens to Sirianni. Like, even if Sirianni gave him confidence, like he doesn't take. They just don't get along. How much should we be panicking right now? It honestly should be like a 3 out of 10. Again, they are an infuriating team at times, but they're still a really talented team, and they're better than the teams ahead of them on the schedule for this next month. Washington is the team you have to worry about. I totally agree. They seem to be the best, and Jaden Daniels has been, I think he'll win Rookie of the Year the way things are going right now. So we got YouTube comments over here. Hurts combination of injury and how the defenses have adjusted to him that hasn't looked the same player since his MVP year. I totally agree on that on some part of it. Like, it does look like teams have adjusted to him or adjusted to the Eagles offense in general. I think it's been better this year. It's just been the backbreaking penalties, and his speed is down. Like, the speed thing is what I don't get. I'm not panicking. We had Walmart stock shelf employees playing wide out, right side of the line, not there. Totally agree. Like, they were in a brutal spot. It's just, again, it bothers me how much they shoot themselves in the foot, and it doesn't seem like it matters. Like, if it's Fred Johnson or Lane Johnson out there, it doesn't seem to matter. Like, they still pick up an eligible man downfield penalty every week. They still have a wide receiver holding on a screen every week. It's just, they always seem to have like a back-breaking penalty on third down. Hurts is still turning the ball over no matter who's out there. Like, it's just, they do a lot of frustrating things, even when they're healthy. Is Jalen Hurts still a franchise guy? I'm like a 5 out of 10 right now. We need to learn how to tackle. Absolutely. Sirianni's holding us back. I like Vrabel or McConnell. We'll see. Listen, if this year goes back, if this year continues the way it's trending, I think you would probably see one of those guys or Bill Belichick. But again, I think this is a super talented team who we're having recency bias of seeing them get shredded and thinking that it's a horrible team. They are to an extent, but they're better than what they showed yesterday. There's no reason to panic. We were missing Brown, Lane, Johnson, and Smith. I guarantee we lose maybe 2 more. That is some positivity that I can get accustomed to. I totally, maybe not 2 more, but I definitely love the positivity. We need that today. Are we watching the Mets? We are absolutely watching the Mets today. We just want chaos on Braves Mets. You see, the special teams player said he thought he was allowed to push the dude into the returner. I mentioned this earlier, so if you guys want to catch back up on YouTube, I did like a 10-minute rant on just the stunning lack of accountability and discipline this team has, all wrapped into one, where you don't know the rules of the game. You're creating a turnover, a penalty. You're coming out after the game and trying to defend that move, and then admitting you don't know the rules. That is insane to me. And that's kind of the microcosm of the Eagles season this far, is they just don't have the discipline necessary right now. And even having those guys back, as an Eagles fan, I see at least 4 losses on the schedule, but if they have 4 more losses, that would put them at 11-6 to end the season. I'm very okay with 11-6, and I'm very positive on and confident in what the next month brings. And I'm really excited to see this offense back with AJ Brown. I think if you think about it, they seem to overcome all the undisciplined issues when he's out on the field because of how talented those guys are. So I think if they can at least clean this up by 20%, they're in a really good spot. And they should have those guys back against teams that have really struggled. And, you look at a team like the Bengals coming up on the schedule, another team that's really good, but they're 1-3. And there's a large reason being that their secondary has been absolutely shredded this year. we brought up Jalen Daniels here on TikTok a few times. He has done it to them. So I want Jalen Hurts to have that opportunity with a fully healthy team and see if he can beat a guy like Joe Burrow and what I think would be a good game. But again, I'm confident in these things. I'm a diehard Cowboys fan from Philly, but the Commanders look like the best team in the East. They do through 4 games. So like, look at that schedule. We'll see. I'm still pretty confident in the Eagles. If Jalen plays like garbage rest of the season, should the Eagles consider signing a new QB? If he's garbage and he's not the franchise guy, which should then be like 3 straight times that we've done this, where we thought we had a franchise guy, gave him $100 million extension, and then he turns out to be bad, I'm fully okay with playing the QB carousel and constantly having a guy on his rookie contract and just trying to play roulette that way, where we invest our money everywhere but quarterback and see if we can surround a quarterback in the draft with just a ton of talent and see if we can do that. Because that's how we got to the Super Bowl both times, where Wentz was on his rookie deal, stacked the weapons on offense and defense. 2022 did the same thing, just kind of loaded up around them. You weren't paying the quarterback top dollar at that time, and you're able to get to the quarterback. So I'm willing to play that strategy, and I think teams are going to end up having to do that as time goes on, just because it's becoming so expensive to afford these quarterbacks, and they have to be damn near perfect for those contracts to work out and still field a competitive team around them. There's truly nothing to worry about. Brown and Smith back teams can't stack the box if we just run more. That is a very important point. And it was kind of lost yesterday because they played so bad. They played so sloppy, and it was just such an ugly game that you can't do a lot of what they did to the Eagles yesterday, was stacking the box and just daring them to throw it over the top when A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith back. Because guess what? We'll just throw it over the top. So that allows a lot more opportunities for Saquon Barkley. Hopefully that creates a lot of balance there in the offense, and I think it should. I do not understand why we didn't run the ball 25 times yesterday. I would have tried even though they were stacking the box. I'd have been like, listen, I'm going to bang my head into the wall a few times and see if it works, and just see if our offensive line can create something, and just trust that they are a better unit. Then I would have been totally okay with that strategy. Who should the Eagles hire if they end up firing Nick Sirianni? It'll probably be Bill Belichick. So we'll try to wrap it right here. We'll be back this week. Again, Eagles have a bye week, but there's still a lot to dive into with this team and where they go from here. So I appreciate everyone who commented on both YouTube on This Way and TikTok on This Way. It's fun even after losses. It just feels good to kind of complain together a little bit, get fired up. Again, I'm mad at this team. I think they are truly just dumb. Like, I think they are they are just the class clown dumb kid. I truly think that. That being said, it is still a very talented team that I'm very confident going into October with. If they are truly getting back to full health, they should be really good. So I appreciate all the support. Even after losses, we'll be here. Wins, losses, we're always here. We'll be back with an episode this week talking more about the Cowboys and the Eagles. So we will try to, maybe Hassan Reddick will be on the team at this point. Maybe they'll make some adjustments. We'll hear about maybe Cooper DeJean's the starter in the slot going forward. We'll see what that has to offer us. We can kind of take a deep breath, get the anger out from yesterday, and move forward. See if we can kind of get some momentum rolling with a healthy unit there in October against some teams with some losing records. We shall see. But again, appreciate all the support. Appreciate all the support online, and appreciate all the support of Eagles fans down in Tampa yesterday, dealing with the hurricane and then dealing with extreme heat. Still showing out. We could hear you guys on the broadcast loud and clear. We'll talk to you this week. Birds are 2-2. Stop shoving guys into your punt returner.